The morning sun scorched the Oklahoma Territory Trail as Grace Gallagher clutched her wailing 3-month-old daughter to her chest, desperate to quiet the infant's hungry cries. It was 1889, 2 months after the land run had brought thousands flooding into the territory, and Grace found herself abandoned, her husband Thomas having disappeared with their wagon, supplies, and dreams after a vicious argument the night before. "Shoo, Lily, please," Grace whispered, her cracked lips barely able to form the words. She had been walking for hours, her boots worn thin, her once fine blue dress now coated with the reddish dust that seemed to cling to everything in this unforgiving land. Her water canteen hung empty at her side, and the small bundle of possessions she'd managed to grab before Thomas drove away was slung over her shoulder. The distant thunder of hooves made Grace look up, squinting against the harsh sunlight. A lone rider approached from the west, his silhouette growing larger against the vast expanse of prairie. Grace stepped to the side of the trail, wary of strangers in this lawless territory. She'd heard enough stories of desperate men and the terrible things they did to women alone on the frontier. The rider slowed as he approached, and Grace could make out a tall man atop a chestnut horse. His face was partially hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat, but she could see a strong jaw dusted with several days' worth of beard. He wore the practical garb of a working cowboy, denim trousers, a faded blue shirt, leather vest, and boots with well-worn spurs. "Madam," he said, tipping his hat. "You look to be in a tight spot." Grace straightened her back, summoning what dignity she could. "We're fine, sir. Just resting a moment." The cowboy's eyes, a startling shade of green, took in her dusty appearance and the crying infant. "Begging your pardon, but you don't look fine. Where's your wagon? Your people?" Grace felt tears threatening, but refused to let them fall. "My husband. He's gone. Took everything yesterday. Said he wasn't cut out to be a father or a settler." The cowboy dismounted in one fluid motion. Up close, Grace could see he was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps 30 or so. His tanned face had lines at the corners of his eyes that spoke of years squinting against the sun. "Name's Isaac Evans," he said, extending a calloused hand. "I've got a homestead about 10 miles east of here." "Grace Gallagher," she replied, shifting Lily to shake his hand. "And this is my daughter, Lily." Isaac nodded at the baby. "She sounds mighty hungry." "She is," Grace admitted. "We both are. My husband took all our supplies." Isaac's jaw tightened. No man worthy of the title leaves his wife and child stranded. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a canteen. "Here. It's not much, but it's cool." Had it wrapped in wet cloth. Grace accepted it gratefully, taking a small sip before wetting her handkerchief and pressing it to Lily's parched lips. The baby quieted momentarily. "Mrs. Gallagher, I can't in good conscience leave you and your little one out here. The next town's 20 miles on, and there's nothing but open country between here and there." Isaac gestured to his horse. "I'd like to offer you a ride to my place. It's not much, just a cabin I built last year, but there's clean water, food, and you can rest up before deciding what to do next." Grace hesitated, studying the man before her. Everything she'd been taught warned against trusting strangers, especially in this wild country. But Isaac's eyes held nothing but sincere concern, and the alternative was almost certain death for her and Lily under the merciless summer sun. "I don't want to be a burden," she said finally. "No burden, madam. Just doing what any decent man would." Isaac helped Grace onto his horse, making sure she was secure before handing up Lily. Then he took the reins and began leading the horse eastward. "Hope you don't mind walking a bit, Mrs. Gallagher. Samson here is strong, but three's a crowd for a long stretch." "Please, call me Grace," she said, settling Lily against her chest. "And I don't mind you walking. I just appreciate the kindness." They traveled slowly through the afternoon, Isaac occasionally pointing out landmarks or sharing stories about the territory. He'd come west from Missouri 5 years earlier, he told her, working as a ranch hand before staking his claim during the land run. "Always wanted my own piece of earth," he explained. "Somewhere to build something lasting." Grace found herself drawn to his straightforward manner. There was no pretense about Isaac Evans. What you saw was what you got. It was refreshing after Thomas, whose grand promises had turned out to be as substantial as prairie dust. By late afternoon, they crested a small rise, and Isaac pointed ahead. "There it is. Home sweet home." Grace saw a modest cabin nestled in a small valley, with a creek running nearby. A corral held several horses, and a small garden plot was visible to one side. It wasn't grand, but it looked solid and well cared for. "It's lovely," she said sincerely. Isaac's cabin was simple but clean, with a main room containing a table, chairs, and a cast-iron stove, and a small bedroom off to one side. He insisted Grace take the bedroom while he would sleep on a bedroll by the fire. That first evening, Isaac prepared a simple but hearty stew while Grace tended to Lily. After they ate, Grace found herself telling Isaac her story how she'd met Thomas in St. Louis, married him despite her parents' objections, and followed him west with dreams of building a life together. "He changed once we got here," she said quietly. "The work was harder than he expected. When I told him I was expecting, he seemed happy, but after Lily was born." She trailed off, looking down at her sleeping daughter. "Some men aren't meant for responsibility," Isaac said. "Takes more than dreams to tame this country." Grace nodded. "I just never thought he'd leave us like that." "What will you do now?" Isaac asked. Grace sighed. "I don't know. I have a little money sewn into my petticoat, not enough for passage back east, though. And I'm not sure I want to face my family's "I told you so." "You're welcome to stay here until you figure things out," Isaac offered. "I've got the room, and truth be told, it's nice having someone to talk to besides the horses." Over the next few days, Grace found herself settling into a routine at Isaac's homestead. She took over the cooking and cleaning, grateful to have a way to repay his kindness. Isaac spent his days tending to his small herd of cattle and working in the fields, but always made time to check on Grace and Lily throughout the day. One evening, about a week after he'd found them, Isaac returned from town with supplies and a small wooden cradle. Traded Hank Miller some fence work for it, he explained as Grace ran her fingers over the smooth wood. Figured the little one could use a proper place to sleep. Grace felt tears welling up. "Isaac, you shouldn't have." He shrugged, looking embarrassed. "It's nothing fancy. But every child deserves a good start, no matter the circumstances." That night, after Lily was asleep in her new cradle, Grace stepped outside to find Isaac sitting on the porch, whittling a piece of wood. "Mind if I join you?" she asked. He shifted over, making room on the bench. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of the prairie. "I never thanked you properly," Grace finally said, "for saving us that day. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come along." Isaac kept his eyes on his whittling. "No need for thanks. Couldn't have done anything different. Still, not many men would take in a woman and someone else's child." Isaac put down his knife and wood. "Grace, I've been on my own a long time. Never thought much about family, was too busy trying to build something. But seeing you and Lily these past days." He hesitated. "It's made me realize what I've been missing." Grace felt her heart quicken. There had been moments over the past week glances held a beat too long, fingers brushing when passing dishes that had made her wonder if she was the only one feeling a growing connection. "I should tell you," she said carefully, "if Thomas ever returns." "Do you want him to?" Isaac asked bluntly. Grace considered the question. "The man I married?" "Yes." "The man who left us on that trail?" "No, never." Isaac nodded. "Fair enough." As July turned to August, life settled into a pleasant rhythm. Isaac taught Grace about managing the homestead, how to milk the cow he'd recently acquired, tend the vegetable garden, and even basic repairs to the cabin. She, in turn, transformed his bachelor quarters into a home, adding small touches like wildflowers in jars and curtains made from flour sacks. Lily thrived under their care, growing plumper and more alert each day. Isaac took to fatherhood with unexpected ease, crafting wooden toys for her and spending evenings with her nestled against his chest while he told stories of his adventures on cattle drives. One hot afternoon, Grace was hanging laundry while Isaac repaired a section of fence nearby. Lily napped in her cradle under the shade of a cottonwood tree. The domestic tranquility of the scene struck Grace suddenly, and she paused, a damp shirt in her hands. "Something wrong?" Isaac asked, noticing her stillness. "No," she said, smiling. "Just thinking how different things are from what I expected. 2 months ago, I thought Thomas and I would be building our home together. Now here I am, with you." Isaac leaned his hammer against the fence post and walked over to her. "Grace, there's something I need to say. I know it hasn't been long, and your situation is complicated, but..." He took a deep breath. I'm falling in love with you. And with Lily too. Grace felt her heart swell. Isaac, you don't have to say anything, he rushed on. I know you're still legally married, and there's a lot to consider. I just wanted you to know where I stand. Grace reached out and took his rough hand in hers. I've been afraid to admit it, even to myself. After Thomas, I was so hurt, so angry. But you've shown me what a real man is, someone who keeps his promises, who puts others first. She looked into his eyes. I'm falling in love with you too. Isaac's face broke into a smile that transformed his features. Gently, he pulled her closer and bent his head to kiss her. His lips were warm and tasted of sunshine as they met hers. Grace felt a sense of rightness, of coming home, that she'd never experienced before. Their newfound happiness was tested the following week when Sheriff Donovan rode up to the cabin. Grace was preparing dinner while Isaac played with Lily on the floor. Evening, Isaac, the sheriff called as he dismounted. Madam, he added, nodding to Grace. What brings you out this way, Sheriff? Isaac asked, rising to his feet. Got some news you both should hear. The sheriff removed his hat. There was a body found about 40 miles west of here last week. Just got word it's been identified as Thomas Gallagher. Grace felt her knees weaken. Isaac was instantly at her side, helping her to a chair. What happened? She asked faintly. Looks like he tried to rob the wrong traveler. Got himself shot. The man who did it turned himself in at Fort Reno, said it was self-defense, and witnesses backed him up. The sheriff looked uncomfortable. Found your wedding papers in his pocket, madam. That's how they knew who to notify. After the sheriff left, Grace sat in stunned silence. Thomas, who had promised to love and protect her, was dead, killed while attempting to rob someone. The final betrayal. I don't know how to feel, she admitted to Isaac that night. I'm angry at him for abandoning us, sad for the man I thought I married, relieved that I don't have to worry about him coming back. She looked up at Isaac. Does that make me terrible? Isaac shook his head. It makes you human. Thomas made his choices, Grace. And now you're free to make yours. The news of Thomas's death changed things between Grace and Isaac. Without the shadow of her absent husband, they could acknowledge their feelings openly. Still, Isaac was careful not to rush her, giving her time to process her complicated grief. As summer turned to fall, Isaac proposed a solution to their situation. The Reverend comes through every couple months to perform services. He'll be here next week. Grace, I'd like to ask you to marry me properly, in front of God and anyone else who wants to attend. Grace's eyes filled with tears. Are you sure? Taking on another man's wife and child. I'm not taking on anything. Isaac interrupted. I'm choosing the woman I love, and a little girl I already think of as my daughter. If you'll have me, that is. Grace's answer was to throw her arms around his neck. They were married the following Sunday in a small ceremony attended by neighboring homesteaders. The Reverend blessed their union, and a celebration followed, with music from a fiddle and banjo, dancing, and plenty of food. That night, after the guests had departed and Lily was asleep in her cradle, Isaac carried Grace across the threshold of their cabin, now truly their home. Their lovemaking was tender and passionate, a physical expression of the bond that had grown between them through shared hardship and joy. Afterward, lying in each other's arms, Isaac traced the curve of Grace's cheek. When I found you on that trail, I never imagined this is where we'd end up. Grace smiled. When you put us on your horse that day and promised a new life, did you mean this? Isaac chuckled. Can't say I planned it exactly, but something inside me knew you were special from the first moment I saw you. As the seasons changed, their lives together deepened. Isaac formally adopted Lily, who took her first steps across the cabin floor that winter, totting from Grace's arms into Isaac's waiting hands. The following spring brought news that their family would be growing. Grace was expecting a child. A brother or sister for Lily, Isaac said proudly, his hand resting on Grace's still flat stomach. Our family is blessed. Their son, Samuel, was born the following November, a healthy, robust boy with his father's green eyes and his mother's determined spirit. Lily, now a chattering toddler, was fascinated by her baby brother, constantly wanting to help care for him. The homestead prospered along with the family. Isaac's cattle herd grew, and he added a second story to the cabin to accommodate their expanding family. Grace started a small business selling preserves and baked goods to the general store in town, developing a reputation for having the best apple pie in the territory. One evening, nearly 3 years after that fateful day on the trail, Grace sat on the porch watching Isaac teach 5-year-old Lily how to ride her new pony. Samuel, now a sturdy 1-year-old, played at her feet with wooden blocks Isaac had carved for him. "Mama, look at me," Lily called, sitting proudly atop the gentle pony as Isaac led it around the yard. "I see you, sweetheart. You're doing wonderfully," Grace called back, her heart full of pride. Later, after the children were asleep, Isaac joined Grace on the porch. The prairie stretched before them, bathed in moonlight. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "Happy?" he asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied honestly. "Sometimes I think about that day you found us, how close we came to a very different ending." Isaac nodded. "Providence has a way of putting us where we need to be. I was supposed to be checking fence lines on the west side that day, but something told me to ride the east trail instead." "Thank God you listened," Grace said softly. "I think about that man I was before alone, thinking I had everything I needed." Isaac shook his head. "I had no idea what I was missing." "And what was that?" Grace asked, though she knew the answer. "This," Isaac said simply, gesturing toward their home and the sleeping children inside. "A family, love, purpose beyond just surviving." In the years that followed, their family continued to grow with the addition of twin girls, Emma and Eliza, born on a snowy December night with the help of a neighboring farmer's wife who served as midwife. The homestead expanded too, with additional acreage purchased from a discouraged settler heading back east. The Oklahoma Territory changed around them, with more towns springing up and the railroad pushing through, bringing progress and new opportunities. Isaac's cattle business thrived, and they were able to build a proper 2-story house next to the original cabin, which became a bunkhouse for the ranch hands they now employed. Lily grew into a beautiful young woman with her mother's spirit and determination. At 18, she began teaching at the local schoolhouse, riding her horse back and forth each day. Samuel showed his father's way with animals and became Isaac's right hand on the ranch. The twins, inseparable and full of mischief, brought constant joy and occasional chaos to the household. Through it all, Grace and Isaac's love remained the cornerstone of their family. They faced the challenges of frontier life together: drought years, illness, the occasional threat from rustlers, drawing strength from each other and their faith. On their 20th anniversary, Isaac surprised Grace with a gold locket containing tiny portraits of their 4 children. "To remind you of the family we built together," he said as he fastened it around her neck. "As if I could ever forget," she replied, touching the precious gift. "Isaac Evans, when you put me and Lily on your horse that day, did you have any idea what you were getting yourself into?" Isaac laughed, the lines around his eyes crinkling in the way Grace had always loved. "Not a clue, but it's been the best blind trail I ever followed." That night, they sat together on the porch of their home, much as they had so many times over the years. The ranch was quiet, the children all attending a social in town. The setting sun painted the prairie in shades of gold and purple. "Remember when we used to sit on that little bench outside the cabin?" Grace asked, her head resting on Isaac's shoulder. "I remember the first time you joined me there," he replied. "I was so nervous I nearly cut my finger whittling." "You never told me that." "A man has to maintain some dignity," Isaac said with a wink. Grace laughed, then grew serious. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd taken a different trail that day?" Isaac was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes. But then I look at our life, our children, this ranch we built together, and I can't imagine any other path. Finding you and Lily was the best thing that ever happened to me, even with all the hardship." Grace asked. Life on the frontier had never been easy, even with their relative prosperity. "Especially with the hardship," Isaac said firmly. "That's what makes the good times sweeter. And facing challenges with you by my side made me a better man than I ever would have been alone." Grace reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining with the easy familiarity of 2 decades together. "When Thomas left us on that trail, I thought my life was over. I never imagined it was just beginning." Isaac squeezed her hand. "Every ending is a new beginning, if you're brave enough to take the first step." As night fell over the Oklahoma plains, the stars emerged one by one, the same stars that had witnessed their first meeting all those years ago. Grace thought about the frightened young mother she had been, alone with her infant daughter on a dusty trail, and the remarkable journey that had brought her to this moment. "I love you, Isaac Evans," she said softly. "Thank you for our new life." Isaac turned to her, his face still handsome despite the years etched upon it, his eyes still holding the same warmth that had given her hope on that desperate day. "I love you too, Grace Evans, and I'd do it all again in a heartbeat." The promise made by a cowboy to a mother and baby left in the dust had been fulfilled beyond anything either of them could have imagined. From the most uncertain beginning had grown a love story as vast and enduring as the Western plains themselves, a testament to the power of kindness, courage, and the human heart's capacity for new beginnings.